What happens when the voice offering you comfort, the one giving you advice, isn't human at all? As artificial intelligence starts to take on the role of a therapist, we're forced to confront some pretty profound ethical risks that are hidden deep inside its code.
And really, the whole issue boils down to one fundamental question. When you tell an AI your deepest thoughts, who actually wrote its moral code? Who is the architect of its conscience? That's the central problem we're going to unpack today.
So, how exactly did we get to this point? Well, this didn't happen overnight. Quietly, almost without us noticing, artificial intelligence has become a new kind of digital confidant for millions of people, a space that feels safe and always accessible for mental health support.
And the scale of this is, frankly, staggering. We are not talking about some small niche group of people. We're talking about millions. Millions are turning to AI chatbots like ChatGPT for advice that, for all intents and purposes, is therapy. And this has created a massive, completely unregulated experiment that's happening in real time.
This is where you can see the real tension. On one hand, the promise of AI therapy is huge, right? It's more accessible, it's anonymous, it's available 24/7. But on the other hand, the problems are just as big. Ethical risks we don't even understand yet, a total lack of regulation, and, yes, the very real potential to cause harm. This is the exact conflict that sparked a whole new wave of scientific investigation.
So, because of this, researchers at Brown University decided this whole phenomenon couldn't just stay in the shadows. It was time to put these AI therapists under a microscope to give them some rigorous, scientific scrutiny.
And you can see their motivation spelled out right here. They're not just pointing out a problem. They are calling for the creation of actual standards. They recognize that these large language models, or LLMs, which are the complex AI systems that power these chatbots, are already acting as counselors. But they're doing it without any of the professional guardrails that are absolutely necessary.
So, how do they do it? Well, they use this really rigorous four-step process. First, they told the AIs to act as therapists using a specific common method called cognitive behavioral therapy. Then they had trained counselors hold simulated sessions with these AIs. Third, and this is the crucial part, they handed over the transcripts of those conversations to licensed human clinical psychologists. And finally, these human experts went through and identified every single time the AI broke the established ethical codes of professional therapy.
Okay, we are just about to dig into the core findings of this study. If you find this sort of deep dive into the ethics of our technology valuable, please take a moment to consider subscribing and enabling notifications. It's a huge help in supporting independent science education.
So, this is what the investigation brought to light. Everything they found could be sorted into 5 critical categories of ethical failure.
But before we break down those categories, I want you to just think about this number. The researchers didn't just find 1 or 2 little problems. They identified 15 separate, distinct ethical risks. This isn't a case of a few random glitches. It signals a problem that is systemic.
All right, here are the 5 big ones. First, a lack of contextual adaptation. Basically, the AI gives generic cookie-cutter advice that completely ignores a person's unique background. Second, poor therapeutic collaboration. The AI could be pushy, steering conversations in unhelpful directions, and sometimes even reinforcing a person's harmful beliefs. Third is something the researchers call deceptive empathy. The AI says things like, "I understand," but it can't, not really. It's just an illusion of connection. Fourth, it showed clear signs of unfair discrimination and bias. And finally, and this is the most dangerous one, a complete lack of safety and crisis management. It just failed to respond appropriately when a user was in real, immediate danger.
And all this leads to what might be the most unsettling discovery of all, the accountability gap. Look, human therapists can make mistakes. They're not perfect. But what happens next is what really matters. So what happens when an AI gets it wrong?
Just look at this contrast. It is stark. A human therapist has a licensing board, they're bound by professional codes of ethics, and they're professionally liable if they commit malpractice. An LLM counselor? It exists in a total void. No governing boards, no professional codes, and zero liability. What we're seeing is basically the Wild West of mental health advice, where the user is the one who assumes all of the risk.
But just highlighting the danger isn't enough. The really crucial thing is to figure out a path forward. How do we chart a responsible future for such a powerful technology?
So let's turn to the researchers' recommendations. And it's important to point out they're not calling for a ban. Instead, they're pushing for clear safeguards to be put in place and for responsible ways to deploy this tech.
They're calling for stronger regulations. And maybe most importantly, they stress that we have to have continuous, rigorous evaluation with a human in the loop to make these systems safer.
I think this quote from researcher Ellie Pavlik really captures the right perspective here. The potential for AI to actually help people is real. But that potential can only be realized if we are incredibly careful, critical, and methodical about how we build these tools and release them out into the world.
Which brings us right back to our opening question, only now it carries the full weight of the evidence. As artificial intelligence becomes our confidant, who are we going to trust to write its conscience?
This research really shines a light on a critical ethical blind spot right at the heart of our rush to adopt AI companionship, and it demands a whole new way of thinking about safety and accountability. To support more explainers that tackle these kinds of complex issues, please like, comment with a question, and consider supporting the channel through Buy Me a Coffee.